Hi, my name's Dr. Miller. I'm a director of Central Ohio Functional Medicine Health and Wellness Consulting. Today I'd like to talk to you about two hormones, cortisol and DHEA. Uh, Both of those hormones are very, very important. They're produced by the adrenal glands, two little glands that sit atop the kidneys. There's a laboratory assessment that measures salivary cortisol and DHEA. It's really the best way to measure it. It evaluates how cortisol levels really differ throughout the day. There are 4 samples that are taken. The first sample is taken at 7 to 9 a.m. It's an indicator of peak adrenal function. The next test sample is drawn at between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Again, it's a salivary sample, and it really shows how well you adapt to the first few hours of stress in the demands of your day. We do a 3 to 5 p.m. salivary sample, and that's a good indication of glycemic control. Then at 10 to 12, that should be the lowest level, and we should see you come from very high in the morning, which is the peak level, just coming right down through the day, and at between 10 and 12, that shows us a nice baseline level. And we also get an indication of the circadian rhythm. It should be higher in the morning, lower in the evening. Cortisol is vitally important. It has a number of functions in the body, and the first of those functions is metabolism. It helps you metabolize proteins, carbohydrates, and fats for energy. Cortisol helps maintain proper blood pressure. It helps maintain nerve and brain function, heart and immune function. Cortisol is essential for how you respond to stress. It doesn't matter whether it's physical stress or psychological stress. Too much or too little cortisol, very problematic and can lead to illness over time. Low values are referred to as adrenal insufficiency. I'm not talking about Addison's disease. It's not to that degree. It's a functional problem, still significant. High values we call hyperfunction, and that's not Cushing's disease. Again, those are functional problems with the adrenal gland. What I do is I try to figure out why you have highs or lows, and then we can look at for specific reasons that you might have the dysfunction. DHEA, very similar type of hormone, widely or uniquely important in the body, works with cortisol, again works in regards to metabolism, same thing, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, helps that metabolism, helps maintain normal weight, blood pressure, same thing, immune function. DHEA is just a little bit different. It helps produce both testosterone and also estradiol. When there's a whole series of steroid hormones produced from cholesterol, one comes down one pathway and it produces something called mineralocorticoids. Those regulate your blood or your electrolytes, sodium and potassium. The next group are glucocorticoids, have to do with glucose maintaining normal blood sugar, and cortisol plays a role there. And then there's DHEA, which is a precursor to both testosterone and estrogen. Now, DHEA and cortisol, they have to be in balance with each other. They work together. There's something called a DHEA cortisol ratio. So if you have high cortisol and low DHEA, it tells us certain things about you. It tells us, first of all, you've been under chronic stress. It says something about the neurological mechanisms and the endocrine axis. There's something called the hypothalamus. It's just a little area in the brain that is very, very important. It sends a message to a master gland called the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland sends a message down to your adrenal glands to produce various hormones. So this HPA axis is dysregulated, and we can tell it's dysregulated by this altered cortisol DHEA ratio. So when we see that, when you have high cortisol, low DHEA, we know that your chemistry, your unique hormonal metabolism there is favoring cortisol and in really slighting DHEA, or diminishing DHEA, I should say it that way. So high cortisol DHEA indicate stress, physical stress, psychological stress, and or may tell us something about your ability to control normal blood sugar. So what are some of the therapeutic considerations if we do this test and we find things that are wrong? Well, we're going to look at lifestyle changes. things that are going to help you deal with stress. Maybe that would be stress reduction techniques. Maybe it'd be biofeedback. Dietary changes. We're certainly going to stress good diet, high complex carbs, low glycemic index, things of that nature. We also are going to look at nutritional supplements. We know there's certain nutritional supplements that are absolutely essential for adrenal gland function. Vitamin C is one of those, and there are others. We're going to look at adaptogenic botanicals. Those are things that will make, if you're high, it'll make that cortisol level come down. If you're low, it'll help it come up. We also look at glandular therapy, again, to support the adrenal and pituitary axis. And sometimes hormonal therapy is needed. Sometimes, frankly, cortisol is needed. Sometimes DHEA will be needed. We can also use nutraceuticals to resensitize that HPA axis. So that's really important. So you might say, well, hey, look, doc, what are some of the symptoms that I might experience if I have adrenal dysfunction? Well, because the adrenal gland secretes cortisol and DHEA, and a number of neurotransmitters, a number of other hormones, it can have broad symptoms, but in general, the adrenal hormones are going to regulate nervous system. It's going to influence other hormonal levels. That's very, very important. As I mentioned, cardiovascular and the nervous system and the immune system. So the adrenal gland, absolutely essential in regards to dealing with pervasive stress. It's adrenal function, good adrenal function, absolutely necessary for life. Dysfunction, adrenal dysfunction, underdiagnosed, seldom treated. So what are some of the things that adrenal dysfunction is associated with? Well, multiple clinical conditions, multiple diseases. One of the most common would be bronchitis or pneumonia. Any disease you can think of that they use corticosteroids to treat is associated with adrenal physiology and cortisol and DHEA. Clinical conditions, often we see decreased immunity. We'll see hypoglycemia because of the relationship to glycemic control. Slow recovery from illness. You might have, you have bad news and you'll just have an absolute collapse. Those are some of the common clinical situations we see. The main symptoms, fatigue. The main symptom, I'm going to say that again, fatigue. Morning fatigue, you can have a good night's rest, but you wake up unrefreshed. And as you go through the day, 2 to 4, you may have a real crash, feel maybe slightly better after 6, maybe get a little bit of a second wind slightly, or just work through tiredness at 9 or 10, 11 o'clock, get another burst of energy. When your adrenal gland is dysfunctional and your cortisol levels bottom out, you're low across the board, everything takes more effort. You have decreased ability to handle stress. When you get into any stressful situation, whether that be at work or at home where there's a conflict, you may literally have to lie down after stressful encounters. Many times we'll start to see people having allergic reactions, certainly craving salt and craving salty foods because your electrolyte balance goes off a little bit and you're excreting sodium and retaining potassium. Sometimes we'll see swollen lower extremities. There'll be some mild depression because not only does the adrenal gland produce the hormones I'm talking about, but norepinephrine, epinephrine, and sometimes mild depression is associated with low norepinephrine. One of the great signs, one of the consistent signs, very, very consistent with adrenal dysfunction is lightheadedness when rising from a sitting or standing position, or a sitting or lying position, I should say. So the onset of adrenal fatigue, it's related to constant stress and overwork. The aggravating factors, you just don't have any control of your time and you're not able to recover. So in summary, adrenal dysfunction is very, very common, very underdiagnosed, rarely treated. We do a very, very careful history for you, do salivary testing to measure cortisol, DHEA. That confirms the problem. Central High Functional Medicine is a telehealth practice. It's a consultative practice. The tests are sent directly to your home. They're inexpensive. They're accurate. We review the findings. We recommend evidence-based treatments to help you. There's follow-up testing to see how we're doing. Now, I want to make mention that adrenal gland dysfunction it's just not a 1, 2, 3 issue. Certainly, there are a lot of things that are involved, and your recovery from adrenal dysfunction sometimes can be prolonged. But it's treated very well, and so if you're experiencing any of those symptoms and you'd like to be tested, and you think telehealth consultative visit is a good fit for you, you have further questions, feel free to contact me. You can call or you can email me there at info@gmail.com, and my website is COFMHWC, Central High Functional Medicine Health and Wellness Consulting.com. Please feel free to take a look and see if there's some way that I might be able to help you in that regards. Thanks for your time.